Now we move to another public hearing, 8.8. Consider adopting ordinance number 21-75, amending section 8.05 of the City of Granbury Code of Ordinances. It's the noise ordinance.
At this time, Mayor, I'd like to introduce Deputy City Manager Michael Ross to give us a briefing on this, and he can introduce the next speaker as it progresses. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. Council. First, I'd like
let me interrupt you. I forgot one small detail. Before we do that, I would like to call on Councilmember Corrigan. He asked to discuss a short, brief comment before we get into the full discussion.
Sure.
Thank you. So I just wanted to address the citizens that are here. I know a lot of you are here for this specific purpose. I want everyone to understand that we currently have a noise ordinance in place. It is old, it is outdated, it is difficult to enforce at any level, whether you're pro-quiet, pro-noise, I want music, I don't want music, whatever the case may be, it's not enforceable. This, not necessarily written as it is today, but a noise ordinance that is up to date is going to be passed. I want everyone to understand that. We want it to be as fair as humanly possible and address all concerns for both citizens that live around the square and the individuals that own businesses and provide music and entertainment on the square and outside of the square. So just know there will be an ordinance passed. It may not be what's written today. I do plan on making a motion to postpone this until February 1st, 2020, so that after discussions for today, everyone can have an opportunity to, 2022, thank you. Everyone can have an opportunity to, mull it over, consider what's been said. I know there's been some new information presented, and I do believe we have someone here that's going to deep dive a little more into the specifics of the recommendations that were given to the city. And that's really all I have to say. I definitely want to hear and understand the concerns and the complaints of people that are on the square and that are providing the music and the venues, and the people that are living around the square that have made noise complaints of various degrees. So just wanted to lay that out there. That will be my motion once we are done hearing everyone speak. But it was my understanding that if I make the motion now, none of you will get to speak. So I want to make sure that all of you get a chance and an opportunity to do that. For everyone that signed up, and just know that will be my motion once we're done. Thank you.
Okay. Michael, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, please allow me to begin with a summary of how we got to where we are today. About this time last year, staff began hearing more and more complaints regarding noise coming from certain businesses in the town square. It had gotten to the point where law enforcement felt that change was needed in the noise ordinance for them to provide any meaningful enforcement that would benefit the impacted citizens. In December of 2020, the city created a noise ordinance task force made up of law enforcement, community development, and tourism representatives from the city departments. This group began the process of gathering information from surrounding residents and business owners to assess what was occurring and what the city could do to improve the situation. In February and March of this year, the city held 2 public meetings. The first was with residents near the town square area, and the second was with the businesses in and near the town square that were potentially impacted. After listening and recording comments from these stakeholders, the task force began the evaluation of our current ordinance and reviewed noise ordinances from other comparable cities and cities with progressive approaches to controlling loud music and other loud noises generated in those cities. Additionally, in March, the city engaged an expert in sound and music, Jeff Krebs of Epicenter Productions, and asked him to evaluate our music-generating venues on the square to recommend any changes that he felt might be warranted. Mr. Krebs spent a couple of nights visiting these venues, observing and measuring sound, and reviewed the city's current noise ordinance. After this exercise, the city met with Mr. Krebs for lunch on a Saturday, where he expressed his thoughts and he clearly felt that there were improvements that could be made at the music-generating venues that could reduce the decibel levels emanating from those businesses. Later, Mr. Krebs and city staff took the time to schedule and attend meetings on June 23rd with the owners of Silver Saddle and Bob's on the Square to share his detailed observations and recommendations. To date, the city has not seen any evidence of these recommended sound mitigation solutions being implemented. The ordinance brought to you this evening is the culmination of all these efforts, and there are some recommended improvements. One key flaw that was learned was the fact that we currently measure the sound from the address of the complainant instead of the address where the sound is generated. Changing this approach should help a great deal. The other improvements that are recommended the other improvements are recommended changes to the specific decibel levels allowed, the applicable hours, and breaking out weekends from weekdays. The details of these changes are included in your packet, and they were sent to all residents and business participants last week. We are fortunate that our sound expert, Jeff Krebs, could join us this evening, and I would like to introduce the person who brought Mr. Krebs to us, and someone all of you know well, our Director of Convention and Visitors Bureau, Tammy Dooley.
Thank you, Michael. Council, City Manager. I do have the privilege tonight of introducing you to Jeff Krebs, who I'm very pleased has been working on this issue for almost a year now. He has worked in the professional entertainment industry since 1986. He holds a formal degree in electrical engineering and is a supporting member of Event Safety Alliance, and currently serves on the board of directors of the Texas Festival and Events Association, which I'm excited because I'm with the Texas Fairs and Events Association, so we're comrades that way. Jeff's body of work has earned multiple patents and a pair of Emmy Awards. Currently, Jeff is the managing partner of Epicenter Productions and Mesmeric Consulting. Epicenter produces more than 500 major events annually, including large local events such as Grape Fest, Wildflower, the Fort Worth Main Street Arts Festival, and A Taste of Addison, just a few. Mesmeric Consulting has emerged as the subject matter expert for entertainment venues of all sizes and types and provides services of major theme parks, clubs, churches, concert halls, and municipalities across the country. He will not tell you also that he is George Strait's production provider and just signed a contract with Martina McBride. He has unbelievable experience in sound, music, and noise, and his rigs follow those two entertainers across the country. And then as the tourism director, I would also like to say that how much work and research has gone into this before Jeff comes up, and the impact of noise on tourism in general, I think, is important to be considered. Jeff is going to be able to enlighten us all on what cities and how cities benefit at this stage of the game by knowing the whole tourism picture. I think it's important to look at tourism and what it is individually. All tourism is not the same. Tourism is a multifaceted, dynamic economy to Granbury. And not, as I said, not every tourist looks the same. In fact, some kinds of tourism can actually displace other kinds of tourism. It's not one over the other. No one loves a visitor to Granbury more than I do. And this proposal is simply a balancing of all good tourism. We love music very much in Granbury. We love events in Granbury, and we love noise in Granbury, just at a level that benefits all tourism. So I am would like to say I'm very appreciative of how everybody has worked together up until this point, and how the citizens and the residents of Granbury have been so great at these meetings, and how our tourism stakeholders have been as well. So I ask you, just please move forward in a spirit of cooperation. And when Jeff is through with his presentation, I'm happy to answer any tourism questions that might arise also about sound. So with all due respect, I'd like to bring up Jeff Krebs.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, council, my name is Jeff, obviously. And my company has a unique perspective. This is not the first time we've been asked to consult with the city on the creation or the modification of a sound ordinance. And I think we've got kind of a unique value proposition to our clients because we're not acoustic consultants. We don't look at things black and white. We don't say this is too loud and this is okay. But rather we look at the entertainment business case because music is our life and that's our business. And so, Granbury was very clear in the early discussions that they had an issue and they needed to find some resolution, but they wanted that resolution to be a fair deal for everybody involved. So we came out over the course of months and did a lot of observation. Some of that was announced and the city knew that I was here, and some of it was unannounced. Sometimes it was a single day trip, sometimes it was a couple of overnights involved. I ate dinner in your restaurants, I drank beers in your bars, I bought stuff from your stores, I ate far too much ice cream at Silver Saddle. I even came in one weekend, clandestine, as an audio engineer for a band and mixed a band in one of the venues. And it was all really designed to really understand more about Granbury and your problems. The sound ordinance that Granbury had in place is unlike any ordinance I've ever seen, ever. It's, for lack of a better word, the lawless west was the plan that was currently in place. And I think, the reason we have a problem is because it allowed some reckless operation to happen. You've had development in your downtown. Obviously, downtown Granbury is a great place to live. If there's anything I've learned tonight, it's that Granbury is not just the place of liberty, but it's also the place of passion. So the idea here is how do we create a middle ground? And so the proposal that I put together was based on that. I do want to take a couple of steps backwards real quick and just apply some science here and some basic principles, okay? When we talk about noise, the definition of noise is unwanted energy. So when sound leaves a venue and travels across the parking lot, that sound becomes noise to that venue because it doesn't do the venue owner any good anymore. It's already left their property. And now that travels into someone else's property and it's unwanted, so it's noise to them as well. Okay, so noise is noise, and the definition is unwanted energy. Granbury's previous proposal basically allowed 90 dB at the complainant's line, property line, which basically meant if you lived 2 blocks that way, I could land an Apache helicopter here and I'm not violating the noise ordinance. And that was fairly unreasonable. So what we did is we recommended that we change that to the offender's property line, which is how every ordinance I've ever put my hands on, ever, is written everywhere. Okay. When it came to a dB level, a lot of cities recommend 65 dB. Now, a lot of those codes and those numbers have been on the books since the 50s and the 60s and the 70s when we were a quieter people. We lived further apart. Not everybody had a home theater. Not everybody had a car stereo. I only knew one person who had a circular saw growing up, right? Everybody had to go borrow grandpa's. But we're a noisier society now. So we had to kind of take a look at dB levels. And dB is nothing more than a measure of sound pressure. The unfortunate thing is that sound is subjective. And there's another component to that, and that component is called frequency. So while we measure volume in dB, 85 dB of 100 hertz is not all that offensive. But 85 dB of 1 kilohertz is incredibly annoying. That's why fire detectors use that frequency, okay? The human ear doesn't work in a linear fashion. Nonetheless, we have to define a number as to what's pass, what's fail. It goes back to the enforceable argument, right? So a lot of cities went with the 65 number. I recommended a higher number for Granbury, knowing that 65 was a bit unreasonable for this day and age, and that you do have a lot of live music venues downtown and in the square. We also talked about the hours, and Granbury wanted to go out and create this tiered approach to give additional operating hours on Friday and Saturday nights. And the proposal, which I think is genius, because again, they understand the business case and allowing businesses to operate. So the end result is this. When we talk about dB as a measurement of sound, 10 dB, if you take something that's 90 dB and you say, okay, now the new limit is 80 dB, it's literally cutting the sound level in half. That's what 10 dB represents. Okay, so if the new proposal is written at 80 dB, it means that it's half as loud as it was at 90 dB. And if that measurement is taken at the venue's property line, then the resident can expect an even greater reduction in the sound that's transmits to their property. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean there's an end to live music. For most of the venues, they should be able to achieve 90 to 95 dB in some places in their venue and still be at 80 dB at their property line. But it does mean they need to contain or control some of the sound that's created within their venue. So that can be done through absorptive materials, sound blocking walls. You can reflect sound up into the air instead of allowing it to leave your space. It can be done through technology, different types of speakers, where the sound is directed down instead of out. So we bounce it off the floor and the ceiling and absorb it within the space. There are devices with measurement microphones that will automatically turn down a sound system when it's too loud. That's another possible option. They're called limiters. It also can mean staff training. A lot of venues that don't employ a full-time sound technician means the band or the guitarist or whomever is the sound guy for the night. He doesn't know the neighborhood. He doesn't know the sound code. But what he does know is his guitar needs to be the loudest thing. So sometimes it's staff training. Sometimes it's hiring sound people. It can be upgrading a sound system. It can be modifications to the building, fences, barriers. These are all things that can be deployed by the venues to bring them into compliance. As a prime example, if you look at a venue like, I still call it Starplex because I'm old. Toyota Music Factory is another interesting one. I was actually brought in as a consultant by Live Nation and also by the city of Irving, and then also by the apartment complex that was suing them. So I was actually representing all three sides. We changed the design, the deployment of the way that they were doing the sound in the space. We installed some fences and some shrubs and made some changes, and now you have a live music venue that routinely hits 100 to 105 dB where the audience is, and then a block away is an apartment complex, and all of a sudden everybody is fine. So it is possible to have live music in a venue and still meet the standard easily, but it may mean in some cases some modifications need to be made. So, any questions about any of this? I'm the science guy, so.
Thank you very much. That's very informative.
Yep, absolutely.
Subtle and candid. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll now open the public hearing, and I have 13 people who have asked to speak. First is Mr. Kenneth Cadenhead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, Council. My name is Kenneth Cadenhead. I live at 603 Crestview here in Granbury, 76048. Quite off the square, but a lot of good information. Thank you. Changes a little bit of how I go about this tonight, but what brought me to Granbury 4 years ago, we started coming here about 7 years ago, was the venues, the music, the things to do, not to mention the small town feel. Love the people of this town, love this town, had to find a way to move here. I've been supporting our local businesses since I've been here. I now own a small business here in Granbury. And I love going and just hanging out. Silver Saddle, Bob's, Fuzzies when they do it on the patio, the Brew, all of them that do live music, karaoke, Night at Divine. I support all of our local businesses. My wife supports quite a few of the shops. But good information on the dB levels and all of that. It's good information to hear. The issue that we have here is that just doesn't fit everybody. Saying at the property line for Silver Saddle, that's their stage. Saying the property line for Fuzzies, that's their patio. Might fit for some, but it doesn't fit for all. An alley right behind Silver Saddle really is her property, but it's not, but it should be measured at that point. But here she is surrounded by 5 brick walls. Fuzzies has got somebody right on the street. Brew can't face in, they can only face out. I think you really need to look at not just dB levels, not just what impact that's going to do to the small businesses that are bringing in the community, and how that's going to financially impact them to try to add sound dampening. The local artists that come in, they're not sound engineers. They bring in an amp and a speaker. They can't afford everything that redirects music or sound. They can't afford computers that will automatically shut it down. They're here for a couple of $100 a night trying to make a living. And that's what the local artists that are coming to Granbury, they don't have that type of money. Our small businesses don't have that type of money. So if you want to put in something that is strictly rated on sound or how it is affected through an alley or bouncing off of brick walls, then the city should at least compensate if we're going to help you do this. Where are you going to put shrubs and sound barriers down the alley behind Silver Saddle? Bob's can put in a taller fence, maybe. What's Fuzzy's going to do? You know, there are more considerations than just someone that can tell you that 95 dB is good, because 2 blocks away, it won't be on somebody's porch. That's not true when it's bouncing off of the walls and carrying further because there's nothing there to cut it down. But I just hope that you would consider the small businesses and what they mean to this community and what they mean to the citizens of this community before you go and just cut their arms off. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Devon Hash.
Hi, my name is Devin Hash. I wanted to give you a little background on who I am and where I come from before I get started. I moved to Granbury in April of this year, but I previously spent the last decade working at multiple music venues across Arizona. And when the pandemic hit and all of the venues were forced to shut down, I worked under the executive director for the National Independent Venue Association. Excuse me. As an organization, we had an economic impact study done and found that independent venues are hard economic drivers for communities all over the country. This includes both metropolitan areas as well as rural communities, much like Granbury. And this economic impact study found that for every $1 spent at an independent venue, drew 12 additional dollars to the local communities surrounding the venue. This economic impact study also found that arts and culture added to the economy on average across the country in the amount of 5 times greater than the agricultural sector. It would be a shame to let that kind of economic driver go in this small town over the discomfort of a few people a few nights a week. I do think that the presentations earlier brought up a valid point, and I really hope that the City Council and the local businesses can come to a mutual meeting ground on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan Wright.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? My name is Nathan Wright, and my wife and I have a residence at 400 East Pearl Street. We have a second residence in the 100 block of East Pearl Street. We have a good-sized restaurant on the 200 block of East Pearl Street, and we'll soon open another restaurant on the 100 block of East Pearl Street. We also have 2 private offices on Pearl Street. May I say, I know Pearl Street. I've gotten to know Pearl Street pretty well. And as the previous speakers related, not all these venues are the same. Pearl Street has varied settings with the venues, parks around. Some of these outdoor music venues are surrounded by parking lots. Some are closer to residences. Not all of the same. I think sameness is a mistake for any ordinance. And we're not just talking about noise, unwanted noise. We're talking about music here. Come on. Unwanted noise, we know what that is. That's the 18-wheelers and the gravel haulers who don't know that there's a loop going around the city. They come right through the square. It's the kids with their souped-up automobiles, burning rubber at the intersections, having their boom boxes turned up with the volume and the bass turned way up. You know, that's unwanted noise. We're talking music here. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time. We've got a lot of speakers, but this is where I'm coming from. Well, one more thing. Another hat I wear, I'm also on the board of directors of the Historic Granbury Merchants Association. And I will say there are at least 9 outdoor music venues on the square or near the square. And like I say, they're all different settings, but these are people's businesses. And we are a tourist destination. And people come to Granbury to be entertained. And if you stifle any part of that entertainment, big mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Rebecca Metters.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm here to speak on this proposal. We've received over 70 emails from folks that couldn't be here tonight that want their voices to be heard. The city manager was copied on all those emails, and I have provided physical copies for your review, along with diagrams of my property and surrounding areas and my sound check points and what I have found every time that I check and what I look for when I check at the beginning of every show and throughout that show to ensure that our decibels are well within the existing limits, and no way possible reaching 90 decibels at any residence. As the owner of Silver Saddle, a board member for HGMA also, and having lived on the square for 3 years, I do understand the need for better noise control in the downtown area. Most common is loud vehicles at all hours of the day and night. But I do agree outdoor music can be loud at times if not diligently sound checked by the host. I was able to participate in both the resident and business noise workshops earlier this year, having lived on the square as well at that time. But before considering the proposal as currently drafted any further, I would like to present a few things. First off, Silver Saddle has taken steps to meet some of the recommendations by Jeff earlier in the year. I am respectful. I do what I can within my means. I immediately went out and bought a sound meter that is of the same quality as listed in the proposed ordinance, and that is what I use to check at the beginning of every show and multiple times throughout the show at 3 different points as shown in the diagram. There's also different points on the square. As I said, that's also listed. If changing the volume location from point of disturbance to the point of generation. Instead, I ask that you please consider each individual venue and how the boundaries and decibel levels will affect them. Boundaries for Silver Saddles live music patio are on 3 sides with 2 property lines forming the corner of the stage, and the alley is considered a right-of-way, although it is a deeded easement to the city for utility and emergency vehicle use. This means there is 0 space for the sound to dissipate before reaching property lines 1 foot away from the amp. Several other venues will be affected in a similar way, including the new Fisherman's Corner, Brew Drinkery, Barron's Creek, and Fuzzies. The proposed ordinance will have a drastic effect on our ability to continue hosting outdoor live music shows to the extent the community has enjoyed to this point. Music levels at the point of generation will limit many venues to unplugged acoustic shows with only vocals and heavy strumming. May I continue? Or soft acoustic and soft vocals with an amp, no bands, no fiddle, no trios, and no loud applause even. This would be equivalent to a slow Sunday afternoon show or background music at a dinner, and that's not what people come to Granbury, that I'm drawing people to Granbury, and the Texas music scene is bringing to Granbury.
Can you bring it? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Eric Wilkins.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks for letting us speak on this. Hey, you guys have a really hard job. Thank you all for what you do. That's a lot to take in. I have several properties right near all of these places. I have 212 North Crockett, which is right across from Barron's Creek. I've got 112 South Travis, which is right across from Bob's, about a block away. And some of the things that have been said that I've been hearing about volume at the properties, some are just not true. For it to be, first of all, what that gentleman said was exactly right. I've been in the music industry for 14 years. My job has been around this exact same thing. Everything he said was exactly right on. I was born the year that he started doing this, so I don't really have much more to say to that. But anyway, everything he said was exactly right on with the decibel levels and all those things. And so, but when I lived at 112 Travis Street, which is right there at the edge of Travis and Pearl, it's the first house on the right, I wish I could hear the music from my back porch when I lived there. I literally did. I love music, and I would be frustrated when I couldn't, because I was just like, thought I was going to be able to hear it when I was sitting on my back porch, but I wasn't able to. And so my encouragement is simply this, like exactly what everybody else has been saying. It is a unique situation compared to the venue that you're talking about. I was on staff at Stonewater Church for 14 years. My job was to basically be over the experience that people had on a Sunday morning when they came to church. There is a huge difference in 3 decibels, it's a massive difference. So to talk about like a 10 decibel drop going from 90 to 80, exactly what he said, it's cutting your volume in half. That could be to the point of things that you don't realize if you're just thinking about the decibel level at a specific property. So for instance, when everyone was clapping earlier, yes, I just have my little cell phone decibel meter, but we've compared that over the years a million times to the legit $1,000 decibel meters, and it's pretty darn close. And when everybody was just clapping, just a normal clap, that was 80. That was it. That was 80 right there. So to say, the close homes there struggle with a loud noise is just a little strong. So my suggestion would be, if there's any way, what we did at Stonewater was I actually gathered all the staff, because this is a thing in churches. If you've ever been in church, a volume is a thing. So I gathered the staff around and I said, hey, let's go to the auditorium. We took 60 people to the auditorium, and I literally just put it at different decibel levels and said, hey, can y'all just listen and just see what you feel? And I had people raise their hand when they felt it was too loud, and then I went over and stood next to them and just sang off key on purpose, and I would get the complaint of like, okay, please turn it up, it's not loud enough. And so just little things like that literally make a huge difference. So my request would be to just do some research, and it may take going to these venues, to these properties. I nominate my property for you to come listen in my backyard and just see what it looks like. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. And Brandon Wood.
I faked y'all all out with that name, didn't I? I'm Bucky, Brandon Wood, what my mom and dad gave me. But of course, many of you know me, and I'm one of the owner-operators of Bob's Off the Square. Another owner, Lynn Hackles, back here, and plus I have quite a few of the staff members that came because that's what this is. That's what's this going to affect. It's not going to affect me. I can walk over, I can lock the door tomorrow, and I can walk away. Some of these other people can too. But what's going to, if you cut our deal down 10%, 20% during our prime time, we're not going to have the money to operate. I don't know about Rebecca, but I know Bob's can't. And so it's definitely, I think we need to focus on the economic impact that we have here. I will say thank you and Michael and everything along the way. They did help us, and they did talk to us. And I met with the sound guy, and he gave me a lot of recommendations. But I wasn't going to go out and put thousands of dollars into a recommendation of what I was going to do. When I think Michael stepped up here earlier and said, "Well, we haven't seen any of the venues do this yet." Well, we were waiting to see what we had to do. What was going to be economically feasible for me. I'm not going to I can't hire a sound engineer every night. I can't hire, in some of the things they asked us to do in this, early on. I even asked for the report, and I never got the report of what board I was supposed to buy to, insulate the fence with, and some of the other things that was requested. So, Councilman Corrigan, that's all I'm here to ask for, is let us know what this is going to look like before you, as the other gentleman said, cut our arms off, because we don't know. Because I promise you, I could probably do 80 decibels because I have barriers. My property line is not an alley 3 feet or Fuzzy's Taco where I could put my decimeter right there within 2 feet of the speaker before measured it, and it would be more than 80. And I have a little problem with 80, but I think that's a discussion we have with the committee. But we never had that discussion. We were issued an email Wednesday. I responded back to the committee on Thursday with some questions because there's other things in the ordinance right now that needs to be addressed, such as holidays, such as festivals for the non-permitted people. And so, there's a lot more to this, and it's such an important ordinance that I just beg you not to pass this thing tonight. And let us get let us as business owners get our minds around it. Let us know and let us have some input on what's being proposed to you. Because, you could, like I said, you can talk decibels all day long, and I can talk decibels all day long with, the people that know about it. And if you don't understand it, it's hard to get by. It's just, but anyway, and I will say one last thing. There are ordinances out there where you measure from Racine, Fort Worth, Waco, or I've got a list of them where you measure from the place that is received. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mick Head? Mike? All right.
Good evening to the commission and everybody else, judge, mayor, whoever. I'm not a public speaker, but I worked in the public sector all my life in public service and law enforcement. But that has nothing to do with what I'm here for tonight. When I heard about what was going on, it kind of shocked me. I moved here. Matter of fact, it was a year and three weeks ago. My wife and I, we came to visit this town, and we went to Christina's. And then from there, we stepped outside, and we heard music at the Silver Saddle. So we went over to the Silver Saddle. And then we heard some music coming from Fuzzy Tacos. Went over there, and that night we made some lasting friends. 3 months later, we moved here. We went back to where we lived, hate to say it, California. Where we had left, mask. When we went back home, they were still wearing masks. Restaurants were still closed. Reports are it's even getting back to that now where we came from. But my wife and I decided to relocate here. She has a business on the square. Took her some time, some Californian, Texas state laws with transferring a license, but besides that, worked out okay. But I've got to know these people. I don't miss any of my family from California. I miss them a little bit, but this has become my family. This has become my home. And what I saw from where I used to live is something like this took place about 30 years ago in our town. Something just like tonight. Let's close it down. And they did. When I retired from law enforcement, I ran for city council. I found that there were 42 buildings that were unoccupied. They closed up after an ordinance like this hit. And they haven't ever recovered. That's what I see happening to what just won the 3rd award for small town in America. Well, you won't get a 4th award. I can guarantee you that if you do this, you won't get one. You know, you guys have a tough job. Mm-hmm. I feel bad that you brought the record that, hey, you're going to do an ordinance either way. I appreciate that you let us talk. I'm not very elegant at it, I guess, but, but I love this place. This is my home. I'm 66 years old. At 65, I found a new home that I plan to die at, be buried at.
Thank you, Mr. Head. Ms. Christine Leftwich? The good news is this is all being recorded, so all of this that we'll be able to use again when Tammy goes forward with the next applause. There is some love here tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Christine?
Thank you. Christine Leftwich. I've been a resident of Granbury since 2003. I moved up here from Austin, Texas, and we know what that used to be known as. I am here because I am a live music enthusiast. I love Silver Saddle. I love to go to Bob's. I love to go to Divine and, the Brew, wherever there is live music. And I can also tell you that the people that come to Granbury come for that very reason as well. I worked for Rebecca for about 7 months until, had to have my foot surgery. But I was working in ice cream and I was working as a bartender. And the best part of that job is when people would come in and order a drink, I'd say, well, are you local? Where are you from? What brings you to Granbury? And it was always, wanting to come visit the square, listen to music, scouting for a house. We got lots of people scouting for houses down here because they love what this town has to offer. And it's not only people from out of town, the locals. We've just heard from Mike what brought him here. You can come downtown on a Friday or Saturday night or any other night, but mostly Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoons. Sunday fun days are awesome. Bring your dog, listen to music, walk around the square, have dinner, all of that. It is that kind of charm that is attracting and driving the tourism. People linger when there is music to listen to. Amen. And I just lost my train of thought. So, I noticed when I read through the exhibits, all of that, obviously it seemed like the Granbury festivals are going to be exempted out of this this decibel, declination, whatever. But I think it's unfair to these businesses to stifle them. if you are, we just heard from other people this evening about, they want to make their house into an Airbnb. Why do you think they want to do that? Because people want to come down, they want to stay on the square, they want to enjoy music on the square, they want to eat dinner on the square, and they want to be able to walk home after they've had a few drinks so they don't have to run the risk of getting pulled over. We have created a unique pocket of entertainment thanks to these local businesses and these venues, and this ordinance and these restrictions that you're going to place are going to undermine that. And that's a shame. And I'm speaking as someone, I don't own any businesses on the square. I worked for Rebecca. I loved it. And I just would ask you to reconsider this ordinance and how it's going to impact the square.
Thank you. Mr. David Wrights.
Good evening. My name is David Wrights. I live at 511 South Baker Street. Moved here September of last year. My wife and I own the Blue Heron Bed and Breakfast on Baker Street. It was a bed and breakfast when we bought it, and it's our calling. It's what God had lined up for us to do, and we're having a great time with it. We get to talk with people coming in from out of town every weekend, have breakfast with them, we visit with them when they show up. They all want to know what's going on in town. I think the entertainment complaint we get is, what do we do Sunday night? Where do we go for live music? And Monday and Tuesday. We need more live music. But it's not, this live music thing is not just about people coming in from out of town. It's, Ken. He's very local, and he's a regular patron there. So it is for us local folks too. We like live music just as much as anybody. And if you want to bring George Strait in, we could probably find a place for him. Y'all have a tough position that you're sitting in right now, but you volunteered for it. You worked really hard to get here. I was on a school board for a few years, and you have to make some tough calls, and there's enough good people making good arguments on both sides. Eventually, you're going to piss everybody off at least once. So it's just the way it is. One thing I thought was lacking in the meetings tonight was there was no deliberation on any of these issues. You may have made up your mind personally about how you were going to vote, but we have no idea why you voted on the Airbnb thing the way you did. We have no idea why you voted on the guys from the Metroplex coming down here and talking about this DFW kind of thing they're wanting to build down here right on the lake, because you just, aye or nay. On this noise thing, take your time. You don't have to decide tonight. The numbers are great and meters are great, but I think each one of you needs to go to the venues and see for yourselves, hear for yourselves how much of a difference it makes. 10 dB, what's 90 dB really sound like? Go off-site and visit some of the residents. I understand the residents, some of them close by, have some concerns. So there are competing interests, but go and physically experience it yourself before you cast a vote on these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gary Farina.
My name's Gary Farina. I have a business, 202 North Houston. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to start with saying I want everyone on the square to be successful. I mean, we have some great people on the square. We have great entertainment. I'm pro all of that. We also have a B&B that's above our building, and we do occasionally get complaints about music. But more the time, the length, what time it stops is what we get complaints about. People are, trying to sleep or whatever. So I just want to be able to take that into consideration. I think that, what we're are providing downtown is a very positive experience for everyone. And, but I just hope that we kind of take that into consideration and go forward from there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Ms. Diane Hedges?
Thank you. I'm Diane Hedges. I live at 435 East Jewell Street, and I also own a business at 107 East Bridge Street, which is Divine Wine. We've been at Divine Wine's been here for over 16 years. There is a huge change in the square from when we started to now. So, occasionally people didn't like it, but I will tell you that quite recently everyone has really enjoyed the changes. We have more places to eat, more places to get an adult beverage, and certainly way more places for live music. And I see this as a very, very positive thing. It's been very good for tourism. Just like these other people, we talk to the customers that come in and speak with us, and they tell us how much they enjoy coming here, and they enjoy so much many times they come back and move here. And I think downtown has a lot to do with that. But we also do have residents and bed and breakfasts. And I get that. And that's part of tourism too, is having bed and breakfast in places where people can enjoy getting a good night's sleep right next to all of this. I would not like anything to squelch the live music industry at all, because I think that would be a big mistake. But finding some way that we can all coexist together, I think might be a very good thing. And that's a very hard decision for you guys to decide as to where is that point that we are achieving that live music that we all want, and I think we all know that we need, and yet still be respectful of our neighbors that are nearby, because we do have to coexist here. Some of these people were here before we ever got here, some of the residents that don't live that far away. Other cities do this, and they figure out a way to make it work, and I think if they can do that, then we can do that. And I just want to say that I love being in Granbury. And I think that's one of the reasons that, because of all of us do love being here, it shows, and that's why people want to come back and be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tammy McDonald? Excuse me. Ms. Tammy McDonald? Okay. Mr. David Southern? David left. That's all I had for the public hearing. So I will close the public hearing, and then I'll ask if there are questions, comments from council.
Mayor,
Ms. Reiner.
before Mr. Corrigan makes his motion, I think I mistakenly said earlier that the B&B was the most involved. I think just in the last 48 hours, I don't know about the other council members, but I lost count at 60, I think, mostly in opposition to the existing proposed ordinance. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for other council members, but I can guess that none of us wants to squelch business on the square. You guys have survived a storm in the last couple of years, and we have encouraged as a council tourism to this day because it's the lifeblood of the city. I will tell you personally, I moved here in 2005 and nothing was open on the square past 4 or 5. And I won't tell you where I came from, but I'm in a much better place. We'll just leave it at that. But as Granbury has grown, yes, I agree with Mr. Corrigan. We have an archaic noise ordinance. We've not had the noise as stated previously on the square. We have to grow. We have to balance. If anybody knows me personally, you know I'm all about balance. It's very difficult, you're correct, to find that balance, but we can do it. I have a couple of questions if Jeff is still around. I don't know if you don't need to answer these. These are just for future discussions, which I have a feeling that's the direction this is going, which I'm happy about. I'm looking at this proposed ordinance, and it's more difficult to retract things than it is to fix things. So if we put something like this into place and it's not right, it will be harder in the future to take it off the books. So my proposition is to engage in more discussion and maybe find that balance. Jeff was saying that 10 decibels cuts that noise in half. Well, for future discussion, when the businesses and residents come back together, maybe pick one of these things and put it online to start and see where that gets us. If we are reducing the decibel level by half, simply by doing that, I personally like going to dinner and leaving Chili's and then going elsewhere after hours. It gives us something to do on the weekends. That's why we all love Granbury. Decreasing the sound levels during nighttime and quiet hours, additional quiet hours. Are you timing me? Wow. No, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
New rule.
New rule for the council members. 3 minutes, that's all we get.
Good job, Carol.
I just think that we definitely need to engage in more discussion and have the business owners come back together with these folks and figure out what that looks like. There's a balance there. Pick one thing and let's see if that works. The decibel level, I think, is better because that was the first thing that came out of Jeff's mouth was the decibel level, and that might be a good compromise. I don't want to squelch hours at this point because I think that might be a good start to fixing some of the issues.
Trish, your time is up, Trish.
Mr. Rodriguez, I still have the floor. But yes, it needs to be changed. There's no question. But there's a balance there, and I think we need to start small. I will stop now.
Thank you.
Mayor.
No, thank you, Ms. Ryder.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. I found my excuse to go to the bar when my wife says I can't go. I'm going to go monitor noise complaints. And I'm taking decibel meter with me. I do have a question for Jeff Krebs. Is there a system out there that we can mount maybe on telephone poles that can get maybe live decibel readings? Let's say we can mount them around the square. Is that something that you know that is out there that we can maybe implement?
There are networkable devices.
Could you come to the mic, Jeff? We're recording this, so it's important that we hear what you say.
There are networkable devices that will do audio monitoring for that purpose. It's an expensive system to put in. I don't know how much benefit you would get out of it. In my professional opinion, you'll know when things are working or not working by the number of phone calls that you get from complaints. And the reality is, looking at the maps of how Granbury is laid out, with the exception of the residents who live on the square, even if businesses were running 84, 85 dB at the property line, odds are in the neighborhoods people aren't going to complain about that because you've got enough distance that what we call the point square law, the sound starts to weaken the further it travels from the originating source. So even if a downtown business were at 84, 85 dB at the property line, odds are complaints are not going to come from the neighborhood. If we establish the dB limit, whether or not we attach hours to that, in my opinion, the Granbury proposal as it's proposed is the most lenient that I've seen. Most cities are at 65 or 70 dB, and that starts at 9:59. So for you guys to give people till 11:59 on the weekends and 80 dB, that's fairly lenient. But I think the best way to measure whether or not the program is working and who's in violation or not is to monitor the complaints that come in.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. That's all I got for you. Thank you. Some of the other things, I agree with Trish that I think there needs to be more discussion. And what I see here is I wish this number of people would have came to the public hearings back in February and March. That way we could have had the opportunity to figure this decibel level out. We could have figured out the hours of operation during the decibel levels. I just wish there was more participation, and I urge the public for if we move to discuss this with the public again, I don't know what's going to happen, but if we move to discuss this with the public again, I urge all the owners that may be affected by this come to those public hearings, and I urge the residents around the square to come to those public hearings. Some of the other things that we may need to take in consideration is the time, the closing hours of business for those businesses that are around the square. I mean, we don't need to implement a time if most of the businesses are closed by 12. That's something to take in consideration. Also, other things to take in consideration in this is if we start handing out noise complaint tickets, the increase in law enforcement is going to take, the increase of administrative duties on our staff, our judge. Maybe the enforcement part of this is something that we need to look at and take in consideration as well. That's all the comments I have.
Can I give a summary?
Yes, Mr. Kaufman, if you would give us a summary of what we've heard here tonight.
You know, I'm reviewing this. Michael, would you give us a summary and explain the plus, the giving and the taking that's going on page 1 of your 3-page diagram? Are you familiar
The
with
technical aspects?
I mean, we're talking right now, they stop music at 11 o'clock. Is that correct?
On 11 o'clock on is the end of the daytime hours is when.
Currently, what is the law now?
That's the existing. It's 10:59 p.m.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay, and if you're playing music after that time now, you're in violation of that ordinance that's existing now, correct?
Correct.
At that decibel.
At any decibel.
At any decibel.
Yeah, because it becomes nighttime hours at 11 p.m.
So what
so what we've done is we've increased the time that they can play music in this proposed ordinance. It's just that extra hour is at an 80 decibel level instead of a 90 decibel level. That's what I read here. I see non-residential property during daytime hours, and daytime hours on the weekend would be Sunday, Friday and Saturday till 11:59. During the week, it would be Sunday through Thursday, that'd be 10:59. So that would be 90 decibels. So it's unchanged. What you're proposing is during nighttime hours, which are identified as 10 p.m. to, on Sunday through Thursday, 10 p.m. to 10:59 p.m. to be 80. And then on Friday and Saturday, it would be from 10 p.m. to midnight on the weekends.
Right.
So you're extending the hours of operation legally, but you're asking them to do it at 10 decibels lower in this proposed ordinance.
For that last nighttime component.
So during the daytime, until 9:59 p.m., they can blare at the 90. I've been to Silver Saddle. She's never that loud.
Right.
I mean, I've been there. I've showed her my little decibel meter and said, this is working, and you're doing a good job. So that's kind of where we're at. I just wanted to make that summary that this isn't a draconian move. We're not trying to kill music. I received 80 emails today and yesterday saying, I'm going to quote it. I was already thinking it, but I actually read it. Don't let December 7th be the day that music died in Granbury. I was already thinking it, but somebody wrote it to me, and that's not what we're trying to do here. we're really trying to enhance your experience. Mr. Krebs explained to us that the sound decibels that we're recommending, it will actually increase your business with sales. And so that's from him. I don't know if you can agree with that or not, but that's what he has said. So here we are. Now, the residential property is taking a big hit. They're going down to 70 decibels, and then in the quiet hours, it goes down to 65. So that is a lot different than what we had. So that's a big change, but the point of measurement is proposed to be changed in this ordinance, and we're talking about extending the hours of operation at a lower decibel than what's currently adopted. That's the change, folks. It's not a draconian, we're going to be 80 decibels all the time. It's only during those 2 hours time, and one of those hours is a new hour created to allow you to play music.
And the plan was to recommend a 90-day postponement of this ordinance going into effect so that we could actually go out and work with each and every venue, taking measurements and seeing what needed to be done in order to become into compliance.
There's also, Bucky brought up some good notes in his email about holidays. We need to address that in this ordinance, how we're going to, if New Year's Eve is on Wednesday, obviously there needs to be a change or something made to the ordinance to allow a New Year's Eve party.
July 4th.
And, July 4th, we need to identify those holidays and put those in here. And we need your help. We need your help to be a part of this solution.
And unfortunately, the reason all of this started, those people aren't here tonight.
Right.
We had plenty to do when this came to us that we needed to fix this ordinance, but we began a one-year process, and a lot of hours have gone into this because that's what we do. And we want to finish this to whatever council and the public wants to see. That's always our goal. From day one, we were seeking compromise. We were trying to figure out how the residents nearby could be happy and how the businesses could certainly survive. That's always been the goal.
Well, I want to thank you and your staff and the committee that's worked and collaborated with those that would collaborate, and I hope that we can continue that moving forward as we fine-tune this, because obviously, as we talked yesterday at staff meeting, before we started getting emails, this thing's not going to get adopted tonight because we've got work to do on it, and we need more collaboration. So thank you for your help and sincerity.
And the citizen input, that is also very much appreciated. So do we have other comments, questions from the
Mayor?
Mr. Corrigan.
Thank you.
I think everyone's had a chance to speak their mind and to keep this from dragging on into the midnight hour. I will make a motion to postpone Agenda 8.8 for Ordinance 2175 until February 15th of 2022.
Second.
And it's second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. I believe that will pass.